We're in the Johnston-Felton-Hay House, a National Historic Landmark and museum property of the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation in Macon, Georgia. The house was built between 1855 and 1860. The house was built by William Butler Johnston and his wife Anne Tracy Johnston. They embarked on a honeymoon in late 1851 that took them to England, France, Italy, Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands, and returned to Macon several years later in 1854. Soon after returning, Mr. Johnston undertook to build a house that was partly based on their taste in architecture that they had acquired through their travels, and we know that from family documents, but also to house some of the things that they had purchased on their travels, including paintings and sculpture. The Italian Renaissance style, or Italianate as it's sometimes referred to, was sweeping the nation as a newly fashionable style in the 1850s. So it's not particularly unusual for a house to be built in this style. Most Southern planners, particularly in Georgia and South Carolina, were still building their residences in the Greek Revival, the prevailing style of the 1830s and 40s, and there was less Italianate architecture constructed in the South before the war between the states than there was in New York City and some major northeastern urban centers. The house is 18,000 square feet, given how you count the square footage. It has a ground story, which consists of about half service spaces. Then there's another level, this level, what we often call the main level, or the first proper floor, which has the grandest rooms, including a double drawing room, the picture gallery in which we're standing, two large hallways, the Marble Hall and the Walnut Hall, the dining room, and two smaller parlors that join each other, the red parlor and the green parlor. Those were principally the spaces on this floor, and then a staircase takes you up to a third level, or second main floor, which is bedrooms, family bedrooms, a servant's room, a nursery, and then yet another staircase takes you up to another level that is, in fact, a story that was intended for guest rooms, but not entirely ever put to that use, and only one or two rooms were ever used. It largely stayed in storage for most of its history and is today. And then an attic story, and then all that leading up to a very interesting circular staircase that ascends to a cupola that surmounts the building. In all, we have 7 levels of the Johnston-Felton-Hay House. The house is restored by the Georgia Trust in various periods. It's not a house that's restored to one single period of occupancy, and a decision was made early on in the restoration that some spaces would be restored to the Johnston years or to their successors, the Feltons, and their period in the house up to 1926, while other spaces were deliberately left and restored to the years of the Hay family, who lived here in most of the 20th century and who gave the property to the Georgia Trust. When you first enter the Johnston-Felton-Hay House, you're struck by its architectural grandeur in the very character of its door entrance. This huge Georgia pine door, which was finished in a bronze-colored paint, has applied carvings like the lion's head and the bolts, so that one would actually think from a distance that this was a bronze door, much like the bronze doors that the Johnstons would have experienced in their travels in Italy. Upon entering the hallway through the doors, one then is struck by the marble hall, as it was referred to, not only by the marble floor, but more importantly by the marbleized decoration on the walls. This marbleized decoration was not discovered or rediscovered until the 1980s, when the Georgia Trust acquired the house and brought in expert paint analysts as well as architectural historians and conservators, and began to do testing here and discovered this well-executed marbleizing. The direct intent of this, the Marble Hall, is to impress. It's also to evoke what the Johnstons saw in their travels on the Grand Tour. The Johnston House, when finished, was architecturally distinguished. It was beautiful, but it was also technologically superior to many other houses in the state and nation at the time of its completion. One of the things we'll be exploring when we look through the Johnston-Felton-Hay House is not only the architecture, but also the technological innovations that make this property unique. One of the most discussed features of the Johnston House is a space called the secret room. It's actually a linen closet, but it's interesting the way it's disguised behind this niche, which corresponds to another niche on the other side, and turns into a swinging door that takes you into a very small but very well-organized space for the storage of linens and other service-related functions. Well, the Johnstons, like a lot of other Americans at the time and others who had servants, liked to sometimes disguise service functions within the building so that they weren't commonly seen by guests. We're located in the scullery on the ground floor of the house, and we're standing next to the furnace pit. This is an excavation that allows visitors to look down into the pit that served the original chambers of the furnace that the Johnstons installed in 1857 or 58 during construction. It was believed to be one of the first central heating systems installed in a house in Georgia, and it operated with the use of coal-fired stoves that then turned cylinders, and cold air was brought in, and then the cold air circulated into pipes by moving around these heated cylinders, and then were disseminated through the house through various pipes throughout the house. Mr. Johnston, with his experience in both craftsmanship as a jewelry and watchmaker, as well as his interest in banking and railroads and in textile milling and in progress, seems to have wanted his house to be very up to date. So he wanted to have, obviously, a central heating system to serve this very large house. We're on the 5th level of Hay House. We're in the attic, and we were standing at the entrance to the cistern. This is an 8,000-gallon capacity receptacle which housed water both from the roof above us and gutters, but also particularly from the spring house that was up the hill, the grotto, where water was piped down and up through pipes in the house to the cistern and kept, of course, for storage, and then in turn piped down as cold water into the bathrooms and kitchen areas, but also pumped down to the furnace where it would be heated and then could be piped through separate pipes up into those bathrooms and enable the users of those facilities to have hot and cold running water. While cisterns are common in late 18th and early 19th century houses of even modest scale, to have a surviving one of this size engaged into the upper floors or roof of a house is a little rare. It was something that usually occurred with very large scale buildings. But it also is a rare survival because of its pump that I'm standing next to, because of its original character being fairly intact. And it's unique too because to have hot and cold running water in 3 bathrooms, as well as for the kitchen scullery in a house in the South or in Georgia in the 1850s, was very rare. We finally arrived on this tour through the Johnston-Felton-Hay House at the very top of the house. We're standing on the decking outside the cupola. This beautiful and very ornamental feature of the house in the Italianate style, like the rest of the building, was not only ornamental, it also gave the Johnstons and their visitors the chance to look out over the entire city. There's a 360-degree view of Macon from this spot, And we know because of the architectural finishes that bring you all the way up to this level that it was intended that the Johnstons' guests would come up here to enjoy this view as well. It was an ideal observation point for Mr. Johnston with some of his industries like his textile mill, his waterworks, as well as downtown, but it was more than anything a place for entertainment and for enjoyment. And that is reflected in family letters and accounts and how this particular space was enjoyed by generations of the Johnstons, the Feltons, and the Hay family that succeeded here on the property.